Hello again and welcome to lesson 3. We are working our way right through percentages, and now we are going to do percent of a number using a percent equation. Here is our percent equation. Is equals percent of, and each part of this equation is going to represent a specific number when we are using percentages. So is the first one we're going to talk about. This is my part. It's the number that I'm going to find a part of. It can be a tip, like when you go out to dinner with your parents and they add a little bit more to the cost of the bill to pay your waiter. Sales tax, whenever you go to the store and buy clothes or jewelry or anything, we have a small tax that's added on to the total cost. Or a discount. So if you like to go and get bargains and you go to a store that's having a sale and they have 20% off, our is number is the discount that you're going to take off of the original price. The next part of our equation is the percentage, which we always have to change to a decimal before we do anything. And it's always just going to be the percent. It's always going to go right here by the equal sign. Then we have my of number. It's my whole. It's what I'm finding a percentage of. It's the total amount of the people I have, the total amount of number. So basically it's my original cost. It's the cost of the dinner, the cost of the shirt that you got the discount on. So it's my whole. It's what I'm finding the percentage of. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide and see how we can use this equation. Are you ready to try out a problem? Here we go. What is 30% of 50? Now, thinking about that equation, is equals percent of, I need to break this apart into the different pieces. So I'm going to move on down, and here's my equation. I have that is comes with my what is, and it's also part of my equal sign. My percentage is always going to be my percentage, no matter what. Here's my of. It's of 50. So I'm trying to find out what percentage of 50. One thing I want you to remember is when we talk about of, and it's correlated with two different numbers in mathematics, it means multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and convert my equation with my numbers. And here I have. So is my part. I don't know what 30% of 50 is. It's my part. It's not going to be as much as 50 because my percentage is less than 100. My equal sign comes straight down. Before I can do anything with a percentage, I do have to change it to a decimal. Remember, you move it 2 spaces to the left from wherever the decimal is in the percentage. If it's a whole number and there's no decimal, I just move it from the back 2 spaces to the left. Okay, I've got my multiplication right here. Of means multiplication. And then I'm going to bring down my 50. So that means I'm going to take 3/10 times 50 to figure out what 30% of 50 is. Here's my multiplication. So I've got 50 times 3/10. You've got to remember that since I have a decimal in my problem, when I'm multiplying, I've got 1 digit behind the decimal, so that's how many times I'm going to bring that decimal into my answer. So I end up with 15. So now that I know that n equals 15, so 30% of 50 is 15. Are you ready to do another one? So, what is 9% of 80? Once again, every single time I figure out a percentage of a number, I'm going to use my equation is equals percent of. So once again, I don't know what my is will be, so I have a variable here for my is. I've brought my equal sign down. I change my percentage. Remember, I've got to move it 2 spaces to the left to a decimal, which is 9/100ths in this case. My of means multiplication. And then I just bring down my 80. So in this case, we're going to multiply 80 times 9/100ths. Notice that I have 2 digits behind the decimal here. Just as a reminder, when I'm multiplying, that means I've got to bring my decimal in 2 places for my answer. So in this case, 9% of 80 is 7 2/10. Let's try one more before we head on to some application word problems. We want to figure out what is 200% of 24. Now you have to stop and think about when we change a percentage to a decimal, this one's going to look just a little bit different. Here's my equation, is equals percent of. We should use it every single time so we can set them up correctly. But notice what happens with the 200% in this case. So notice that when I change 200% to a decimal, I'm still only going to move it once, twice to the left, and I end up with the whole number 2. And that's okay, because think about it. If you're more than 100% of something, it's going to be bigger than the original number. So everything gets brought down just like it did before. I have my variable here, my equal sign, my percentage changed to a decimal, and then I have my of, or my whole number that I'm finding the percentage of. So this time I'm going to take 24 times 2, which happens to be 48. So 200% of 24 is 48. Let's try an application word problem. So here we have it. Whitmore Middle School has 850 students. If 42% of the students bought lunch on Monday, how many students bought lunch on Monday? Well, let's find out. So I'm going to use my equation, is equals percent of. So I'm going to look at my problem for the different things. So if I notice, I always look for the percentage first. That's the easiest one to find. And I do have a percentage in my problem. It's 42%. So that's going to go under my percentage. Next, I'm going to look for my of. My of number, remember, is my total or my whole amount. In this case, they have 850 students. So that's going to be my total or my whole amount. So here's how I would set up my equation. I'm going to change that 42% to a decimal times 850. Here's my multiplication. I've got 850 times 4200ths, which gives me 51 after I pull my decimals in. So n is going to equal 51. So the answer to my problem here is 51 students bought lunch on Monday. Let's do another application problem. So we have Julie and her friends went to dinner, and the total cost of the dinner was $27.34. Julie wants to leave a 15% tip. How much was the cost of the tip? So like we've done before, the first thing we're going to do is use the percent equation, is equals percent of. And I want you to think about the percentage first and see if we can find the percentage in our problem when we know that it's right here, the 15% tip. Now I am going to change that to a decimal, as you see right here. Now I've got to look for the of. In this case, the of is the total amount of the dinner, which is $27.34, and I put it right here, and I'm going to multiply 1500ths times $27.34. Here's my multiplication. This one, I have 4 digits behind the decimal in my problem. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I bring that decimal in, I have to bring it in 4 places. So if you look right here, I have 3 decimal 3010. You have to think about the fact that we're talking about money. And money always stops in the hundredths place right here. And since this is a 1 in the thousandths place, it's less than 5. So I'm not going to round up. I'm going to keep my number the same. So my answer is n equals 3 3/10 or 30 hundredths. So my tip is going to be $3.30. You're going to look at the same problem on the next slide, but you're going to see that it's just a little bit different. So here's where we left off on the last problem. So once again, Julie and her friends went to dinner, and the total cost of the dinner was $27.34. Julie wants to leave a 15% tip. The difference in this problem is it says how much was the total cost of the dinner with the tip. So we've got to do a little bit extra here. In the last slide, we solved for the $3.30 for the tip right here. But we've got to think about it. We want the total cost of the dinner with the tip. So we have to take the total cost of $27.34 plus the tip, which was $3.30, to get a total cost of $30.64. So when we're working with these application problems, we really have to pay attention to what the problem is asking for. Is it just asking for the tip, like in the previous version of the problem? Or is it asking the total cost of everything? So make sure you're reading your problems correctly.